Varka, the fabled knight of Boreas himself, titan of the Knights of Favonius. Just the thought of one day going head-to-head with him in combat, it makes me buzz with excitement. It's a beautiful life we live in this world.
The Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius, Varka, is one of the most hyped characters in the history of Genshin Impact. Not only is he the first Hex hypercarry, but is also the first character to wield 2 claymores and first to break the Twink Noodle Limb's curse. As the most powerful warrior from Mondstadt, who Hoyoverse has been hyping up for over 5 years, as the great knight who is constantly compared to Capitano, the first of the Fatui Harbingers. It is only expected that Varka will be one of the best characters ever released. Right? Well, in this video, we were going to discuss the, rumors regarding Varka's kit teams, weapons, and artifacts.
You're right. I came here for the moon.
Varka's gameplay is clearly inspired by Dante from the classic Devil May Cry 3, where Dante had 2 big swords called Agni and Rudra, with one of them dealing fire damage and the other dealing wind damage. In Varka's case, it's rumored that as an Anemo DPS, one of his claymores will deal Anemo damage while the other deals damage of a different element, depending, of course, on who's on your team. Similar to Chaska in a way. Of course, the active element will follow a specific order of priority, which will be the usual Pyro, Hydro, Electro, and then Cryo, with no synergy with Dendro or Geo. In fact, if you have another Anemo character on your team together with 2 units of one of the synergistic elements, Varka's damage will increase dramatically to over double of his otherwise regular damage. To be a bit more specific, his ability to deal double the usual damage is one of his passives, while the double elemental infusions is his elemental skill. Not only will Varka's elemental skill do that, but once you click on it, it will unlock 2 new attacks for the Grand Master. 1, a new special elemental skill, which will deal Anemo plus the chosen element's damage. 2, a new special charged attack, which will do the same thing, but in a much cooler way, perfect for your aura farming purposes. Varka also has a very useful exploration ability in the held version of his elemental skill, which makes him leap forward pretty high in the air. It may not be very useful in combat, but it will surely be nice to use in the open world. But enough of his elemental skill, what about his burst? Well, his burst deals an instance of the chosen element plus an instance of Anemo damage afterwards, and, that's it. No special effects or anything like that, just plain old 1.0 Genshin in all its glory. Now that we know what Varka does, it's time to discuss what teams to use him on, what kind of numbers they can achieve, and how relevant they are in comparison to the current meta. Well, since Varka needs a Hex teammate, an Anemo teammate, and 2 other teammates of the same element, it seems like his team compositions will be a bit limited, especially for newer players that don't have a lot of characters. As things are right now, Varka's best team will be his Pyro team, which consists of Varka, Venti, Durin, and Bennett. In this team, Venti will give Varka a 50% damage bonus, shred Pyro resistances by 40% with the VV artifact set, and deal a bit of damage of his own from his burst. Durin will deal a substantial amount of damage off-field as a sub-DPS while also shredding the enemy's Anemo and Pyro resistances by about 35%. Bennett will buff Varka's attack considerably, heal, and even give a Pyro damage bonus if you have activated his C6. If you do not have Venti, you can substitute him for other characters like Sucrose, Jean, Aoife, Kazuha, or Faruzan. If you don't have Durin, you can substitute him for Jangling, Mawika, Yanfei, or Thoma, but be aware that the team won't perform as well. If you don't have Bennett, you can cry and try a different element. You're probably wondering why Venti is better than Faruzan. The reason is because even though Varka is an Anemo character, most of his damage at C0 will come from his second element. In this case, Faruzan basically only buffs Varka's Anemo damage, while Venti and the others, but especially Venti, can also increase his Pyro damage through other means besides the VV set. and independently of what composition you decide to play him with. You must not forget that at least one of his teammates has to be a hex unit. Now, if you don't have or just don't want to use his Pyro team, the next best thing should be his Hydro team, which consists of Varka, Jean, Farina, and Mona as the hex unit. In this team, Jean will grant healing, which will then accumulate stacks for Farina's elemental burst and will shred pyro resistance through the VV artifact set. If you're an older player, there's a pretty decent chance that you have Jean's C2 or 4, which would further enhance Varka's damage by increasing his attack speed and by shredding the enemy's Anemo resistance by 40%. Farina would also have great synergy here, giving Varka a damage buff through her elemental burst and dealing very solid damage as a sub-DPS with her elemental skill. Similar to Farina, Mona would also buff Varka's damage with her elemental burst. And similar to Jean, if you're an older player, there's a chance you have some or all of her constellations. In that case, plus the fact she is a hex character, she will grant many different buffs. If we take a C4 Mona as an example, she will buff the Grandmaster's damage by an extra 60% and increase his crit rate, crit damage, and Hydroswirl damage all by 15%. Also increasing Varka's elemental mastery by 80%. If you don't have Farina and Mona, you could substitute them for Yellen and Xingqiu. But in turn, you'd have to substitute Jian for Venti or Sucrose. Varka won't be as much of a hypercarry in this team, but it's still something you can do. For his Electro team, the Grandmaster's best teammates should be Venti, Fischl, and Ian Sun. This team is much more straightforward. Fischl will be an Electro sub-DPS, and Ian Sun will increase Varka's attack, also granting a 25% damage bonus at C6. Now for his final hypercarry team, which should have been his best one since he's the Knight of Boreas. His Cryo team will consist of Varka, Venti, Shenhe, and Escafir. In this team, Shenhe will reduce the enemy's cryo resistance by 15%, increase Varka's cryo damage based on her own attack, and buff his cryo, normal, and charged attack damage by 15%. Similar to Shenhe, Escafir will also shred cryo resistance from enemies, but she will function as a sub-DPS and as a healer too. However, in this team, since there are only 2 cryo characters and 0 hydro characters, her resistance shred will be of only 10%. Unlike the 55% everyone's used to from freeze or mono cryo teams like Skirk's teams. Like the other Claymore DPSs in the game, Varka suffers greatly for the lack of decent free-to-play Claymore options. Because most of them have horrible passives, most theory crafters have been calculating his teams with the Serpent's Spine, the Battle Pass Claymore, which is his best 4-star option. But if you don't want to buy the Battle Pass, you could still use the Black Cliff Slasher, the Tidal Shadow, and the Earth Shaker as free options. Now, for the 5-star weapons, his best one will obviously be his signature Claymore, which ascends with crit rate, buffs Varka's attack speed by 10%, and increases his damage and crit damage by 30%. Of course, other 5-star options won't be as good as his signature weapon, but if you don't plan on pulling for it, you could still use other 5-star Claymores that you might eventually have, such as the Beacon of the Reed Sea, the Wolf's Gravestone, 1,000 Blazing Suns, Fang of the Mountain King, and so on. As for the Grandmaster's artifacts, his best set will be the newly released one from Nod-Krai, a day carved from Rising Winds, which gives an 18% attack buff on its 2-piece, and its 4-piece gives an extra 25% attack and a crit rate bonus of 20%. Since this artifact set was just released in version 6.3, most people are not going to have them completely farmed yet. For that reason, even if they're not as optimal as this one, you can still use other sets, such as Gladiator's Finale, Desert Pavilion Chronicle, Marachose Hunter if you want to use him with Farina, and even Shiminowa's Reminiscence if you somehow have none of the other ones but have this one. And now that we know what Varka does at C0, what his teams look like, and what weapons and artifacts to use, it's time to check his team DPS numbers. Well, as the Knight of Boreas, as the Grandmaster of the Knights of Favonius, As a character that has been hyped since the game was released way back in 2020, surely Hoyoverse wouldn't ruin him. Which is why most theory crafters have calculated that Varka's premium pyro team should have a DPS of around 90 to 100,000.
What? Oh, hell no!
Around 90 to 100,000.
No. Wait. Hey. Wait.
Just in case, Sir Varka, I think it would be best if you stayed behind as well. You can leave the research center to us.
I mean, I would have said the Knight of Boreas should probably be out on the front line, but okay, fine.
Ever since all the numbers were revealed and people began doing calculations, most people have been worried about Varka's place in the meta. Surely a DPS of 100,000 isn't unplayable, but is that really how much damage the Knight of Boreas deserved? Why can Nefare and Flynn's deal over 150,000 DPS with their premium teams, while a character as hyped and foreshadowed as Varka struggles to reach 100,000? In fact, his so-called premium team isn't even his real best team. As it stands right now at C0R0, Varka's best team is the wheelchair team with Sucrose, Inefa, and Columbina. If you are not Flynn's and this is your best team, that means you're an old DPS. It almost seems like Hoyoverse is actively sabotaging him. Some people have even noticed a pattern that characters released after Lantern Rite have always been underpowered. Those numbers are for his Pyro team. His Cryo and Hydro team should be at 70 to 80-ish thousand DPS, with his Electro team even lower. But is it really the end for him? Is his current Pyro team really the best team that he'll have in the near future? Some of the current strongest DPSs, such as Flynn's, Nefare, Zebai, Skirk, and Moika, have either released with their dedicated support or a bit after them, and most of those DPSs deal less damage than Varka without them. So the most popular hopium that people have started to believe in is that Nicole and/or Lowen, who are set to release just a few updates after Varka, could be the dedicated supports that Varka needs. Lowen is being rumored to be a standard banner cryo main DPS, so if that's really the case, then he won't be on the Grandmaster's team. Nicole, on the other hand, is being rumored to be a pyro shielder and maybe a very specific support, akin to a Scoffier, but for hex units. That being said, Nicole would only buff his pyro team, leaving 4 other elements behind. Those elements could be covered by characters released during the Snezhnaya updates. But if that happens, they're more likely to be generalist supports that happen to benefit Varka than supports made specifically for him. It is also worth noting that even though Varka's team is only around 90,000 DPS, that's with the Serpent Spine. So if you were to wish for his signature weapon and replace Venti with a 4-star character and his best Pyro team, the team cost would technically remain the same, but the team DPS would jump to around 115 to 125,000. It's not super insane like Flynn's 150,000, but it's definitely not terrible either. So, is Varka cooked? Well, probably. Can future supports make him better? Sure, but it's more likely that Hoyo will make them much better for newer Snezhnaya DPSs, reaching even higher numbers than the current best teams in the game. Considering this, even though there's a chance that Varka could get better in these last few updates of Nod-Krai through the release of people like Nicole, you will probably bench him very soon after that. Now, if you're not a meta slave, and you don't really care about his numbers, but you like his design, personality, and gameplay, then sure, he's definitely worth wishing for. I'm not sure I can show these things here because I don't want this video to be nuked by the heavenly copyright strikes. But Varka has definitely received cooler animations than most characters. Only his numbers are subpar. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments below if you plan on pulling for Varka or skipping him. Thank you for your attention and have a nice day.